Good evening and welcome to our September Committee of the Whole meeting. I know that when we had our emergency meeting last week, we talked a little bit about how we know that so many people are still trying to recover and will be recovering for quite a while from Hurricane Harvey. And our thoughts and our prayers and certainly our heart is with all of them. And we're grateful for any of you that are watching and any of you that are here tonight. The Board of Trustees of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in a Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, September 7th, 2017, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m., for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, September 11th, 2017, school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or are in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. We do have one member of the Community Leadership Committee with us. Julie Heineman, will you stand up and wave so we can give you a round of applause for your work? And I'm going to start off with a report. Well, I'm going to just mention that this report will be on Monday. The report on the 2017 STAR 3 through 8 end of course and state accountability ratings and community and student engagement ratings is scheduled for Monday. Moving on to action items and starting with our consensus items, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. That's item number A. Are there any questions on that item? All right. B, the board will consider approving the minutes of the August 14th, 2017 regular meeting. Any questions on that item? Okay, so those two items will stay on the consensus with everyone's agreement. All right, let's look at some of the non-consensus items and see if we can move some of those. Starting with the 6A, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. 1, acoustical shells for 9 high schools. 2, assorted beverages and food. 3, beverages, concessions, and catering for the Berry Center, Pridgeon Stadium, and CFISD Natatorium. 4, college readiness and career interest test. 5, contracted educational services and professional development services. 6, district fundraiser services. 7, grocery goods and supplies. 8, HVAC parts and supplies. 9, insulation services. 10, plumbing fixtures, parts, and supplies. 11, restaurant catering and delivery services. 12, roof repair. 13, spirit apparel and promotional items. 14, video security surveillance system camera upgrade. And that is the final item on that agenda item, which is A. Any questions on any of those items?
I do.
Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Linda.
Mr. Jackson?
Oh, I got a quick one. Go ahead. Hey, Linda, is the ACT test, is that no cost to our students? Both those?
That is correct. It is at no cost to our students.
I thought so. That's awesome. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Jackson?
And Linda, as a follow-up, what's the rationale for using the ACT instead of the SAT?
The ACT is more closely aligned to the content area than the ACT is. That's SAT. I'm sorry. So that's the main reason why we're using that one.
So it not only is it useful for the students, but it also delivers more useful information back to management as well for our students.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just a quick question on the camera upgrade. That's an $8 million contract. So is this an upgrade, or what, are we really just rolling out more of our security provisions that we had already anticipated?
Yes, sir. That's was all included in our 2014 bond authorization to add additional security cameras and upgrade the analog to digital, and that's part of that contract to do that.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions on this side? All right. Mr. Kobe?
No, go ahead.
Okay. This one's for Matt or Dylan, and it's the acoustical shells for the 9 high schools. Is that because they've aged out the ones that we have, or what? Why are we doing that? I was just questioning that.
Yes, similar to the camera upgrades, that's part of the 2014 bond program to add or replace acoustical shells at all the high school stages.
Oh, so it's not always just replace, it's part add to and stuff.
That's correct.
Okay.
Some of them then have the current standard, and so that was included in the bond program. To do
Okay,
that.
all right. Thanks, Dylan. And then I had a question for Dr. Macias. And on that college and career interest test, can you tell me a little bit more about the college interest test, the career interest test? We talked about the ACT, but I was just curious about that.
At the 10th grade level, we also provide this test to all students, and we're able to get information to be able to get them ready for dual credit courses, as well as just additional information that we can use with them.
Okay.
Mary, is there anything else that I can add to that?
Just, I was kind of
Come on up.
want to know a little bit more about the career part of it. You know, we start the plate at the back when we're collecting, so y'all ought to sit toward the front, you know.
Well, okay, thank you. I'll make note of that for Monday night. The students, as they take those tests, there's a career interest part, so there's a lot of questions that the students are asked as they prep up for those tests, as they sit down and get going with them. And what it does is it then matches that to career options. Their interest survey matches to career options. And when the kids get their report back with their scores on the test, actually, it gives them other information. What colleges align with those careers, what colleges have the best majors in those career areas, and there's a connection there based on the students' responses to the career survey.
And a little follow-up question. This is not something that's required by law or by the legislature.
Absolutely not. It's something that we offer to our students as an opportunity to, it's part of our whole college and career readiness initiative across all of our high schools. We feel that it's really important to test to see where the sophomores are, and then there's a requirement that we identify students that are not yet college ready by the end of their junior year, and we choose programming for them in their senior year that addresses those gaps, and so this helps us to do that.
It also helps get them ready for the ACT test.
Absolutely.
The following year.
The 10th grade test does.
Yeah, which is our college readiness marker that we have to have as part of the former HB5.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate y'all doing this, and I'm tickled it's for all of our students. It's not just for those that pay for it. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Is everyone comfortable moving that to consensus?
Ms. McGoy, I have one item that I would ask that we remove because I will need to abstain from voting, and that's item number A2.
All right. So we will remove A2 and put that on the regular agenda, and then all the other items, is it okay if we move those to consensus, ladies and gentlemen? All right. Thank you. B, the board will consider adopting an order authorizing the issuance of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District variable rate unlimited tax school building bonds, which may be issued in one or more series in accordance with specified parameters, and enacting other provisions related thereto. And I believe that is a Monday presentation.
Actually, I was going to make a brief presentation tonight, but that you would take action Monday night.
All right, great, thank you.
So, thank you.
Go for it, Mr.
Madam
Snow.
President, members of the board, Dr. Henry. We are recommending that you approve bond orders on a parameter sale for 2017 series bonds that gives the administration the authority to sell these bonds on a negotiated basis within certain parameters as described in the bond orders. Series 2017 are variable rate bonds totaling $187.5 million from the 2014 voted bond authorization. This bond sale provides funding for Phase 4 of the 6-year 2014 bond program, and after this sale, we will have $358,810,500 remaining authorized but unissued bonds from the 2014 bond election that will be available to sell in order to fund phases 5 and 6. The $187.5 million of new money for phase 4 projects include $145.6 million for renovations at 10 schools, including Thornton, Cook, and Truett Middle Schools, as well as Langham Creek High School. $36 million for instructional technology, $2.4 million for security upgrades at support facilities, similar to those upgrades that you just asked about at the campus level, Mr. Jackson. $1.3 million devoted for additional school buses, and $1.4 million for architectural fees for Phase 5 projects. So with that, Terrell Palmer, our financial advisor with First Southwest, and our bond counsel, Jonathan Frells with Bracewell, are both here tonight to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Mr. Jackson?
Stuart, if you would please comment on the term of the bonds and how that's determined. This always seems to come up on talk shows and radio stations, and there seems to be some confusion from time to time as to the length of a term of a bond and how that's identified.
Well, these bonds, as I mentioned, are variable rate bonds. Initially, over the life of these bonds will be 25 years. Is that correct, Terrell? That's close. About 20 to 25 years.
But we are scheduling these bonds in three different, Nicole's favorite word, tranche. I believe preliminarily on a 1, 2, and 3-year basis. And so after those initial rate periods expire, then we will do something with those bonds, either remarket those bonds to a different rate period or fix those bonds out or something like that. So does that answer your question?
Well, it answers half of it.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask it a little bit differently. You did not indicate that we were buying computer equipment with any of these bonds, and you indicated that these bonds would have a relatively long life as of the final term.
Actually, $36 million is for instructional technology, which is computer equipment and such. But what we will schedule out is what we always do with our computer equipment, our technology, is that for those device-type computer technology instruments, we have an estimated useful life of 5 years, no greater than that, and so we structure those bonds to be able to be paid off within that time period. The infrastructure that we've already paid for and already installed, some of that that relate to cabling and wiring and wire access points, those have an estimated useful life of 10 years, and so we structure those bonds to mature after those, pay those bonds after that period of time. So all of the facilities, the renovations, the building of new facilities and schools, that's being structured over the life of the longer life of 20 to 25 years.
So the life or the term of the bond itself will mirror the estimated useful life of the asset which is going to be acquired using the proceeds of the bond sale.
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions on this side? This side? Do we want to keep that a separate item, or do we want it on the consensus?
Separate.
Separate? All right. That will be non-consensus. The next item is C. The board will consider the 2017 tax rate resolution to support the 2017-18 maintenance and operations and debt service budgets by setting the 2017 M&O and interest and sinking tax rates. Mr. Snow, are you also going to present on this one a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. If you recall, during Karen Smith's presentation on the budget back in June, she mentioned that we would not be able to and could not be able to adopt our tax rates until we received the certified property values from the Harris County Appraisal District. We did receive our certified values on August 21st. Also during her presentation, she mentioned that the operating budget would require a tax rate of $1.04 per $100 of assessed or taxable value, and the debt service budget was expected to require an interest and sinking tax rate of 40 cents for a total tax rate of $1.44, which as you are well aware, is unchanged from the prior year. The recommended INS tax rate of 40 cents is expected to cover the debt service principal and interest on all of our current outstanding bonds, as well as the expected principal and interest payments on the additional $187.5 million new money bond sale that we intend to price in October, the ones that I just talked about in the bond orders. I want to talk about a little bit about our past issues and the 2014 election. For your information, since the 2014 bond election, we have sold $910 million of new money bonds from the 2004, the 2007, and the 2014 bond authorizations. And so with the closing of the sale of the additional $187.5 million in November, at that time we will have sold a total of $1,097.5 million of new money bonds from the 04, the 07, and the 2014 bond authorizations. And if you recall that we were very conservative in estimating our debt service tax rate in connection with the May 2014 election to show that we could sell all of our bonds, the remaining bonds of the 2004, the 2007, as well as the 2014 $1.2 million bonds. All of those totaled $1.5 billion. And so what we showed was, and communicated with the community, was that that debt service tax rate increase would be approximately 4.5 cents. However, we have managed our long-term debt in such a way as to be able to service all of this new debt that we have sold so far, as well as the projected principal and interest on the new bonds, the $187.5 million. We've been able to service all of that debt with a debt service tax rate 1 penny lower than what it was in 2013 prior to the May 2014 bond election. Last month at the August board meeting, you approved an agreement, an option to, an option to select, reduce our wealth per student under Chapter 41 in the event that would become subject to recapture. That agreement had to be approved by the Commissioner of Education before we could adopt our tax rate, which he has done. So now we're clear to be able to do that. So with that being said, we recommend adoption of the 2017 tax rates of $1.04 for M&O and 40 cents for INS, totaling $1.44, as described in the resolution that you have before you, so that those tax rates would be able to support the adopted operating and debt service budgets.
Could I add one thing before you? Yes. Stuart, and I know most everyone knows this, but just in case anyone has moved to the community in the last year or is not aware, talk just a little bit about our 20% local optional homestead too.
We are one of approximately 200 districts across the state that offer an optional homestead exemption. Under the tax code, that exemption can amount to either anywhere from 5 to 20%, and we offer a 20% local optional homestead exemption for our taxpayers, which is a direct, it's direct tax relief for our taxpayers. And so that optional homestead exemption then is a direct reduction of the appraised value of their property, and reduces the tax that they pay, that they're levied based on our tax rate. For your information, and I had pulled some information based on our certified tax values, we lose nearly $5 billion in taxable value due to the optional homestead exemptions. And based on our current tax rate of $1.44, that equates to almost $71 million of tax revenue that we forego on an annual basis due to that optional homestead exemption. So that is a tremendous benefit for our taxpayers, our homeowners, to be able to take advantage of the optional homestead exemption.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Any questions?
Oh, I just wanted to ask, I just wanted to confirm that there was no change and no increase, and it's the same as it was for the past couple of years.
No increase in the tax rate. In fact, the tax rate hasn't changed since 2013.
Thank you. Again, y'all do so much with this. Thank you.
And it did change. It did change from 2013 by lowering
We
rather
lowered
than
it by a
raising.
penny.
I want to make sure everyone understands that it was by a penny, and that rate has been in effect since 2014. Mr. Jackson.
Did you want to call on Debbie?
Your hand.
A couple of my standard questions, Stuart, on this. Harvey has cost us potentially 9 revenue days. So you are suggesting that we do not need to make a change in our M&O rate even to cover any shortfall of revenue from Harvey. Can you comment briefly on that, please?
We're suggesting and we're recommending that you approve a tax rate the same as last year without regard to the impact that Hurricane Harvey is having on the school district. Although there is a provision in the tax code that would allow the district, if we so choose, to increase the tax rate above and beyond our compressed rate plus 4 cents, which is the $1.04, without the need for or without the requirement of a tax ratification election. But we are not suggesting or recommending that we do that. The commissioner, as we understand it, is investigating different options for funding, options that he has available to him under his authority to be able to hold us harmless for lack of funding, and which the commissioner has done. Not this particular commissioner, but commissioners in the past have done. Held us harmless on ADA over the period of time. In other words, they would prorate instead of 177 instructional days, which we generally have on our instructional calendar, and we would be funded over that instructional calendar of 177 instructional days. In this case, they would fund us over the remaining number of days over the current year, which would be 168 days, but the amount of the total funding would not be reduced. So that's one option that he has under his authority, and I understand that he may do something like that again this year. So I'm not anticipating any decline or reduction of revenue due to the 9 days that we've missed for instruction.
Excellent, thank you.
Just to add to that, I'm meeting with the commissioner in the morning at 8 o'clock, and then a team of folks here from Cypher ISD are also going to be in a larger meeting with the commissioner, and hopefully we'll hear some of what Stuart's talking about in the morning.
Yeah. He may also do something, make some changes or make some allowances on the property values that are used for the funding formulas. So we just don't know. We don't have a lot of information at this point in time, but as Dr. Henry mentioned, hopefully we'll have some more information tomorrow after the meeting.
And a quick follow-up question. Typically, we always see an analysis comparing where our tax rates are for an average house compared to neighboring districts. So for contiguous districts, would you say that the tax burden upon our residents would be greater than or less than neighboring contiguous districts?
The tax burden for Cypher ISD school taxes is much less than our neighboring districts, primarily due to our 20% optional homestead exemption.
And then, of course, my standard question that I always ask every year, always hoping the answer is different. There was a time period where we were encouraged to grant the optional homestead exemption, and there was an attempt by the state government to hold us harmless for the majority of the revenue that was foregone by granting that to the taxpayers. Do we still have a recompense from the state to offset the loss in revenue, since the board at that time chose to do that which was encouraged by the state?
Under the current funding formulas, the state recognizes half of the value loss due to the optional homestead exemption. I mentioned that the value loss, the total value loss for that exemption is nearly $5 billion. It's $4.9 billion. And so the state then would recognize about $2.5 billion of that under the current funding formulas.
Thank you.
just adding one more little statistic that I give every year in the State of the District report. A $200,000 home in Cypher ISD, an average taxpayer saves nearly $600 in property tax because of that 20% homestead.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Any other questions on this side? I know, I'm getting there. Ms. Blackshear?
We're impatient.
Thank you, Ms. Mongoya. Stuart, I would like to commend you, and I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, you and Karen, for the outstanding job that you have done in laddering our sale of bonds, because that helps save this district money and also enables us to keep our tax rate lower. I know when we were working on the 2014 bond, at that time, you thought we would be able to even drop our rate, which we were able to drop it 1 cent. And for a growing district and the amount of work that we have done within this district, with that bond money, that $1.2 billion, you know, your department has really enabled us to keep the costs down and save our taxpayers money, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. We do have a lot of help with that, though, with our financial advisor and our bond counsel, and they are outstanding and provide us with tremendous service to be able to do that.
Any other questions? Mr. Covey?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Number one, you got the certified property values. Did that come in at about what you expected it would be?
It was slightly lower. It came in at about a little over 3.9% increase. We were expecting about a 4% increase. So it was about where we thought it would come in at. I think that, though, I really believe that a lot of the development, commercial and residential development that is in progress, which, as you know, if you travel 99 and out the 290 corridor, you see all of that development going on. And I really believe that the Harris County Appraisal District did not pick up a lot of that development that was in progress at full value. So I really feel that next year we should see a larger increase in our overall values.
And then
now, I don't have any data to back that up, but it's just something a feeling that I have on that.
Then to kind of piggyback onto that, because this is something that I hear on a regular basis, and that is that our school taxes just keep getting higher and higher. And as I explained to them, it's not our taxes that are getting higher, it's the appraisals. And that's something that I think our constituents don't understand. They're thinking that we are increasing taxes for them when in fact we are not and haven't for the past 4 years.
That's right. You don't appraise the property. The Harris County Appraisal District appraises the property. All you do is levy a tax rate applied to that appraised value. So,
I just felt like there's something that need to be stated, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Covey. Ms. Blackshear?
One more question, and I know you can't possibly have the answer to this yet, but just thinking of and kind of piggybacking on Bob, will the effects of Hurricane Harvey to property owners have an effect on our appraised values next year?
They could, and that's a great question. They could. We just don't know to what extent that might be. There is provision in the tax code that we could, if we choose, request a reappraisal of our property. We would have to work with other jurisdictions, Harris County, the appraisal district, and that sort of thing. We would be subject to the cost of being able to have that reappraisal completed. I don't know what that cost would be, but that is an option that we have. Another option, a lot of folks have lost their homes, and it's difficult to levy a tax on a home that has sustained such significant damage. There is also a provision in the tax code that allows taxpayers who have property in a disaster area to be able to pay their tax in installments. And that's something that I'm talking with our tax department with about whether we offer that opportunity to our taxpayers or not. It does not require board approval. There are some conditions with that they would have to pay at least a quarter of their tax liability before the delinquent date of February 1st, and then then the remaining 3 payments, equal installments, would be due April 1st, June 1st, and August 1st. But that's an opportunity or something that we might consider doing. It would provide an issue with cash flow for us because we rely on that cash flow, obviously. But that's something that might help our taxpayers.
I hope it's something that we can look at. Thank you.
Dr. Ogletree?
Stuart, would you share with any of our viewing audience why this is so important, this rate, what we're able to collect, what the appraisals are, as we look at the reduction of state funding?
Well, of course, the reduction of state funding or state funding itself is just half of the equation of our total operating revenues. Obviously, the other half, in fact, it's more than half, it's our tax revenue. Our state revenue is down to about 38 to 40% of our total operating revenues, and the rest comes from our tax revenue. So it's critically important that we be able to levy a tax that is going to help support our operating budget. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but especially in times where it's a possibility that our state revenue is being reduced, which I don't think it will be, although when you look at our state revenue that we budgeted for 2017-18 is significantly less than the state revenue that we received in 2015-16. And that's primarily due to the increase in the values that we experienced in Cypher. So we're continuing to see a reduction in state revenue overall, places a much greater burden on our taxpayers to be able to make up the difference.
Just as an example, I came to the district in 2011, and in 2011, the state actually funded a higher percentage of the local revenue than we did with local taxpayers. So that's how much it's changed just in nearly 7 years.
Well, I didn't want to take a shot at the legislature, but I feel like I kind of have to. But we talk about tax relief. And my feeling is if the legislature funded public education at the level that they should be funding it, then that would automatically provide tax relief to our taxpayers because they wouldn't have to pick up a greater burden in order to fund our schools.
Any other questions? All right. I assume that we want to keep that as a separate item. That'll be on non-consensus. D, the board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts paid from bond funds to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to such contracts as follows. 1, 2017 district-wide security vestibule project, the vestibule construction. 2, 2017 district-wide security vestibules project, card access and hardware installation. Any questions on that item? Mr. Covey?
This is probably geared toward Roy. Roy, on these vestibules, and we talked about this, just recently, and it's great because I understand these are all going to be implemented in the next 18 months. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. But in looking at the cost to do them over the different facilities we've got, there's a big difference. that I was seeing. And I understand the difference on the older schools that have no vestibules, but on the schools that we just recently renovated, I saw costs, and I was just wondering, is that because we had to put like new different things into those new vestibules, even though we just did them the past 3 or 4 years?
There's several issues that are the devices that we put in several years ago, unfortunately, are not as compatible with the newer system. So some of those we're actually having to change out and upgrade to make it compatible with our current systems. And then two, just in talking with our police department as well as the campuses, some new ideas have developed as we develop the design of those. And so that's impacted some of the costs there. But I do want to point out this project is actually going to be a little over $500,000 under the dollars we had projected in the 2014 bond program. So we're really excited that we're able to bring this contract to you and do it at a very economical basis compared to what we originally thought the scope would be.
Any other questions on this side? Mr. Jackson?
How many schools are yet to be addressed, if any?
It's a total of 61 facilities, Mr. Jackson. It's 37 elementary schools, 13 middle schools, and 9 high schools that we have work included in this contract.
However, my question was, how many schools have yet to be addressed?
These 61 is what's going to be addressed in this contract. We have had on some of the newer buildings, obviously we have built those security vestibules in, and in some of the previous renovations we've done through the 2014 bond program, and these are the remaining ones we have left to do.
Okay, I think I just heard the answer to the question. So let me put words in your mouth and you correct me if I'm wrong. Based on what you just said, we will have no schools that have not been addressed with security upgrades. Is that correct?
After this contract, that is correct, yes.
Good, thank you.
And just to clarify, that is about 18 months from now before all the work will be completed.
Yes.
Any other questions? Where would we like this item, ladies and gentlemen? Consensus or non-consensus? Consensus, okay? Yeah. All right. E, the board will consider approving the 2017-18 Cypress-Fairbanks ISD School Code of Conduct. Is this presentation today or?
Well, we have a short presentation today and we'll be seeking approval on Monday.
All right, thank you. Dr. Stewart, you want to start?
I will. As you know, this year was a legislative session, and although we have several or many changes in the Code of Conduct, there are 7 significant changes that relate to legislative updates. And Josh Campbell is going to do that presentation for us today. Josh?
Good evening, President Mongolia, Dr. Henry, Board of Trustees, thank you. Before sharing some of the major revisions to our code, I'd like to take this opportunity just to kind of share with you a little bit about our process for making additions or revisions to the code. And so typically, as you see here, Chapter 37 requires that the board approves the code of conduct for each district in the state of Texas. And as you know, we all know that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And so as you see here, these are some of the stakeholders that we actually submit or actually try to submit or get feedback from in regards to our code of conduct when submitting that feedback. The way that typically looks is in October, we submit campus feedback forms, not only at our home campuses to all stakeholders and request feedback from, but also through the district website. In November of each year, we typically establish a code of conduct committee that's made up or comprised of campus administrators and district administrators that analyze the revisions and make adjustments and try to reach consensus. In December, we also take those possible revisions and seek feedback from our DEIC committee at the district level before making any of those revisions. As that process continues in May, basically in a legislative year such as this year, we ask and look at those, track those bills, and then make see how they're going to impact our code, if you will, and then make those revisions. And then we take it back to the DIC and our Code of Conduct Committee to seek revisions and help reach consensus on that as well. As you know, we typically bring our Code of Conduct to you, our final draft, in August. Due to legislative changes this year, we're bringing it to you in September. And so that will be, we'll be seeking your final approval on the code on Monday evening. With that said, some of our major revisions this year due to legislative changes include Senate Bill 179, which is also commonly known as David's Law. David's Law typically is addressing bullying and cyberbullying, and some of the main components of that is that it redefines bullying to include cyberbullying, but also a single act. Rather than just that pervasive bullying that may take place, it addresses a single act. In addition to that, it expands the jurisdiction for off-campus cyberbullying behavior and how that may impact on-campus behavior or the safety of students on campus and student learning, methods of anonymous reporting, parent notification, and then certain bullying behaviors will allow us to place or expel students, depending on what that behavior is. So how do we respond to those particular legislative changes? As a district, we take bullying and safety of our students very seriously. If you remember and recall, last year, one of the major changes listed in our Code of Conduct, actually the only major change listed in our Code of Conduct last year, was the prohibition of bullying and enforcing that reporting of that bullying. In an effort to continue our proactive measures, Student Services has enhanced training to staff, students, and parents to address legislative changes related to Senate Bill 179. The greatest deterrent to bullying behavior is an informed and healthy campus culture. So proactive measures such as PBIS, project safety, character lessons, and restorative practices will continue to be a focus on our campuses as we attempt to eradicate bullying not only in our schools but in our community. To further assist our campus administrators and staff in identifying and responding to bullying behaviors, updates have been made to not only our bullying flow chart, but also our investigative procedures, which will better inform our campuses, the community, and those involved in those bullying behaviors. And not only that, but help us support our victim, our bully, and our bystanders, all of those involved. A second major revision to our code based on legislative changes is that of House Bill 674. House Bill 674 requires the prohibition of out-of-school suspension for students in grades pre-K through 2 unless a student engages in certain conduct. For the 2016-17 school year, data reveals that approximately 280 students grades pre-K through 2 were assigned out-of-school suspension, and this data represents approximately 1.3% of our target population in those grade levels. To assist us with the analysis and impact of this legislation, a principal focus group was established in July to help remedy the situation and how this might impact a campus. To ensure a safe learning environment for all students, a continued focus of proactive strategies such as PBIS, project safety, character lessons, social skills, student support plans, and restorative practices are a must. To best support our campuses and staff and teachers in the classroom, an enhanced level of training has been provided and will continue to be provided in regards to identifying and supporting students who struggle behaviorally. For success to occur, early diagnosis and the function of the behavior is a must, and early parent involvement is critical in the process. In addition to the enhanced training of teachers and support staff, an increased focus of wraparound services will be provided for this particular target group. Wraparound services include the collaborative efforts of support services from various departments here at ISC. Those include student services, guidance and counseling, psych services, special education services, and 504 services. The third major revision to our code based on legislative changes is that of Senate Bill 1553. Senate Bill 1553 adds provisions related to adult visitors on campus who may pose a substantial risk to themselves or others. The legislation establishes protocols for campus administrators and district police officers when attempting to remove or refuse entry to an individual exhibiting such behaviors. Campus administrators have been trained regarding such protocols related to Senate Bill 1553. Basically, if a parent, guardian, or individual from the community comes on campus and exhibits these behaviors, the law requires that they are provided in a written documentation or the recording of a verbal warning from those specific individuals listed, that being a campus administrator or school police officer. In addition to that, there's a requirement to provide written information regarding due process or the appeal process to those individuals. The term of removal, or the maximum term of removal for these individuals, is 2 years, and protocols must be established when a parent or guardian who is involved in this process needs to attend a student's IEP or a 504 committee meeting. Additional legislative changes that were made were more textual in nature, include House Bill 1935, in which verbiage changes to address the location of a knife rather than the actual definition of the knife. A prime example would be if you have a student who hunts deer, and they have a knife that in essence would be an illegal knife because it extends past 5.5 inches, would be considered an illegal knife. But if they're out in the woods hunting, it's not necessarily considered an illegal knife. So the legislator changed it to where it's the location of the knife is where it's restricted. And so our APs, principals have been trained now and are aware of the verbiage of that change, and it's referenced in our code. House Bill 913 and House Bill 1819 requires revisions to the list of prohibited weapons regarding improvised explosive devices and firearm silencers. So those are changes referenced to the penal code. And then finally, House Bill 1808 adds sexual coercion to the list of Title V penal codes. And there's a litany of Title V penal codes, but that one was added. So although that is a quick review and a brief review of the major legislative changes associated with our code this year, we would like to share with you about the acknowledgement of our code. As you know, each year our code of conduct is made available not only online, but also in a hard copy at the home campus for all parents and students to view. In addition to that, as a district, we work to ensure that each and every stakeholder is informed and well educated in regards to the behavior expectations of our students, staff, and community members. To assist in this process, parents, students, and staff can expect to access the code online or at their home campus. To ensure proper review of the code of conduct, parents and students are expected to sign and submit a code of conduct acknowledgement form to their home campus. These forms can be accessed in new student registration packets or from their home campus administration. Each year, campuses use a comprehensive reporting feature in Cognos to determine which students have not completed or submitted a signed acknowledgement form. And then they follow up with those students and parents. In addition to our signed acknowledgement forms, campuses provide code of conduct assemblies to all students on campuses each fall, and then follow up with some of those same assemblies in the spring, because as you know, you'll have kids move in and so on and so forth, so we make sure we follow up with those. We hope this presentation provided you the necessary information regarding our process, as well as pertinent information regarding important legislative changes for our 2017-18 Code of Conduct. And at this time, we're prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Blackshear?
Yes. Going back to House Bill 674, what type of behavior would prompt an out-of-school suspension in this age group?
Those behaviors are going to be level 4 and 5 in our Code of Conduct. So it's going to be reference to firearm violations, drugs, alcohol, and gang-related behaviors. So it's going to be our level 4s and 5s.
In that particular age group, do we currently have those types of behaviors?
We have a few, yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow.
We do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, rarely, yes.
Rarely, but sometimes.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
And then, kind of as a follow-up to that, when on Senate Bill 1553, what behaviors are they referencing there? Are you referencing there?
For the adults? It's going to be anything. So basically, we have protocols for everything that's listed here. We already have protocols and processes in place. That's the positive thing in our district. Any of these changes, we already had protocols and processes that address these issues. It's just additional training. And those particular instances of what you're asking is it's going to be behaviors that are going to be more violent in nature, or disrupting. The way the verbiage is written is if it's disrupting the learning environment and inappropriate for school.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask because I don't know, and I saw Deborah look at me. What is considered sexual coercion?
That definition is listed in our glossary, and it's basically coercion. It's a form of bullying is what it's going to be, but it leads to that act is what it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Yes.
And when Josh mentioned that those are Title V infractions, those are behaviors that occur off campus. So there's a litany of things that are Title V, and that was just one that's added by the legislators.
And if a Title V offense, if a Title V offense occurs on campus, it results in an expulsion. If it occurs off campus, it results in a placement.
I was trying to Google the penal code definition for you, but I couldn't get to it in time.
That's okay. I'll take that definition.
Mr. Covey?
Yeah, Josh, and I didn't write down what bill it was, but on the first part where it's expanding district jurisdiction for off-campus cyberbullying behavior, I guess I have a hard time understanding that, and I guess my first question is how do we find out unless it's been reported? And number two, what is our responsibility in that fact?
Okay, so bullying and cyberbullying has already been listed in our level 3 offenses, so we've always been able to place for those offenses. Cyberbullying, or any act actually that occurs off campus, our campuses typically do not process any of that or assign any discipline to those individuals unless it affects the learning environment and is brought on campus and interferes with the learning environment. Then we have a right by law to address those issues. It's not to say that when those instances come to our table, if a parent informs us of something that's going on in the community but hasn't been brought on campus, it's not that they don't take proactive measures to keep kids safe. It's just that we do not assign discipline for those instances. In these instances, if it is reported and we determine that it has caused a dramatic effect to that particular student's learning opportunity or the learning environment itself on campus, we have a right to take action on that by law.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ogletree?
Yeah, thank you for this report. And I would like to also, I don't know about the other board members, I have your PowerPoint presentation in hand, so I can refer back to the deals. Going back to David's law, which now says one act, act. And I saw your responses, and I couldn't write all those notes down, but there may be a perception that and of course, we have 116,000 students, that we really don't take bullying that seriously. But one act is now under Davis law bullying. Are we documenting every allegation of bullying that happens in our schools?
Yes. If bullying is determined to occur, we do code that as bullying. What I can share with you in regards to the legislator changing the definition to include one single significant act, the old definition did allow bullying to be identified as one single significant act. The legislator made that clarification because there was a misinterpretation in many instances across the state that it had to be pervasive and persistent. It had to occur over time, and that's not true. Based on the definition, it basically implies that if there's an imbalance of power in between the two, then bullying has occurred. Okay. And so they basically clarified that. Our old definition and our code did abide by it could be a single significant act or persistent or pervasive.
Okay. Now, and who determines
that is our campus behavior coordinators by Chapter 37, or our APs, basically. And one of the things, and you heard me reference, and I'll get you a copy of this, is basically Our APs use what we consider FFI, policy FFI, which is our investigative procedures, and our bullying flow chart. And literally the bullying flow chart walks them through step by step the definition of bullying. And it helps answer those questions and helps them determine. One of the things that you'll determine, though, and what our campuses have shared with us, is that whether bullying is identified or not, what we typically find is that the support services that we provide, whether it's coded as bullying or not, doesn't typically change. We're still providing support whether bullying is identified or where that behavior was not classified as bullying. The support services that we provide are still provided to those students.
That's good. Now, our campus personnel, they go through this and
Yes.
the training and all that.
Yes.
And what do we do to communicate what
They've been
is and what
trained
is
this
not to
summer.
our-
The
to our
whole new
kids?
bullying flow chart has been trained. APs have been trained. Principals were briefed on this at the Great Beginnings training this summer. And then what we've done to enhance this process is we have provided, in addition to the bullying flow chart and FFI, we're providing campuses with ongoing training throughout the year in many separate trainings. But in addition to that, we're providing scenarios of bullying, what's classified as bullying and what's not, and asking them as teams on their campus to build a consistent basis to have those tabletop activities and process through those to be consistent.
Now, that's for our personnel, but for the kids, to let them
Okay,
know,
I understand what
hey,
you're asking.
this
The
is-
code of conduct assemblies is where that's going to be reviewed
Okay.
with students.
Do we give any support to a student who is, let's say, who feels like they've been bullied and have shown some signs of depression or possible thinking of suicide or that? What do we do for students like that?
Absolutely. One of the processes in the bullying flow chart when those pieces are going through is there's an evaluation of those students that may be the victim. And if you heard me reference earlier, I referenced how we provide support services to the victim, the bully, and the bystanders, so those individuals who are witnessing the bullying. But all of those, in that particular form allows and forces campuses to look through that process to seek what people or personnel need to be providing support to those individuals that are involved in that behavior.
That's good, good. As to House Bill 674, I believe you mentioned, and is this per campus? You mentioned a team.
We developed, for both Senate Bill 179 and House Bill 674, we developed or established a principal committee this summer to help process and analyze through the impacts of those two bills on our campuses.
Now, is that a district-wide, or does each school, how is that?
That was a district-wide. I mean, it was probably, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 10, depending on the committee of a selection of principals that were a part of that process. At the Great Beginnings training, we trained principals on that process, and then we're following up through additional trainings throughout the year for those individuals, for all campuses.
And Dr. Mark, this coincides with your initiative too, doesn't not?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We, as part of the board monitoring plan, reduction of discipline referrals is part of that plan. So, our hope here is to catch them early.
Right.
Catch misbehaviors early so we can stop them and change behavior, not just punish. So that's our goal.
Okay. And our schools, the PBIS helps in this regard.
Absolutely.
Are we still having campuses to sign up?
Yes,
for
and
PBIS?
Ms. Cooper, want to address that?
Yes, we currently have 75 of our 86 comprehensive campuses that are PBIS. We did many reviews this summer and district-wide because people with House Bill 674, are really trying to refine their processes and things on the campus to be able to support the students. So we're 11 campuses away from being a total PBIS campus district. So we're almost there.
Good, good. Thank you all. Great report. Great work.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree. Ms. Hartley?
Yes, thank you. I agree with John, it was a great report. A lot of the questions I had, he kind of touched on. And I sat here as you're talking about the flow chart, I was like, oh yeah, wait, I just got trained on that as a new teacher. So it is it is state, it is in practice. But I wanted just to highlight, I do appreciate how many times in the student code of conduct you do talk about cyberbullying, because that's, the kids' world now, their phones, Absolutely. Instagram, they DM somebody, they direct message somebody, something very mean, and nobody sees it. And so, but luckily we can take screenshots and things like that, but it's happening with shows like 13 Reasons Why that kind of highlight revenge, and then the person ends up committing suicide at the end of the movie. It almost makes it cool. And I think through all of this, the messages that our students are getting are scary and sad. And so I really appreciate y'all highlighting this and bringing it to where we can reach out further than just our building. Right. And talk to them about it and help them with it.
What does DM mean? Did they
direct
DM
message.
Somebody? Okay.
You're on Instagram and you direct message somebody.
I didn't know what they DM somebody.
So, no,
I didn't know.
Well, it's like you can write under somebody's picture or you can direct message them.
Okay.
And nobody else will see that, and you don't know what they're saying. You can't tell what they're saying. But I also wanted to just commend you for, under the restorative practices, adding things like behavior coaching, anger management classes, the family group conferencing. Our students are dealing with so much more than what's going on in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And so whenever they get in trouble, instead of just punishing them, we reach out and we say, what's going on in your life and what can we do? So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartley. Mr. Jackson?
Well, Christine actually just answered the question I was going to ask of you. But I think it's important enough to go ahead and mention it one more time. Restorative practices is, in fact, a term of art, not only in the law, but also in the literature. And I think probably everybody on the board has already gone to seminars on that concept. But if you would please explain, as Ms. Hartley did, what the concept of restorative practices is for our viewers and perhaps our parents and students as well.
Yeah, restorative practices basically comes from the background of restorative justice. And it's basically that when harm is done to someone, that you have an opportunity to restore and fully understand the impact that your actions had on others. There's various degrees of restorative practices. A lot of the restorative practices that we do, and a lot of the practices that we do, is that it's proactive in nature. And so we're constantly training our students and teaching our staff on how to walk students through the impact of your actions on others. And so we're not doing it just proactively. Restorative practices sometimes gives the connotation that we wait until behavior occurs and then we try to restore it. So we go at it proactively, but then once an action has occurred, and as Ms. Hartley just shared, especially with social media, is that many of our students don't understand the impact that their actions on social media have. And so by having those conferences with those students and allowing them to talk through those processes and fully understand the impact of their actions, not only on them, but more importantly others and the learning environment, is true to the process of restorative practices. And I think we can all agree that DMC suspension and placements do not change behavior.
So a quick follow-up question. Would you say that the concept of restorative practices in place today may not have been in place when I was in school at all times, or when parents of our students today were back in school?
I think there's always been that teaching mode of restorative practices, and I think although we're using the term of restorative practices, when you look at the fact, as Ms. Cooper just shared, that only 11 of our campuses are falling short right now in our PBIS initiatives, and those are coming on board, frantically, is that PBIS is in of itself a restorative practice. I mean, and it's, as you shared, it's listed in literature, it's listed in law with the state, and so those practices have always been there, but as you know, in your day-to-day, if you're not keeping that as a forefront and a focus of what you're doing with students, it can drift away, and so that's an enhanced focus on our campuses right now.
I join the rest of my colleagues in applauding your report, but also the emphasis that the entire district is putting in this area, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Blackshear?
Yes, Mr. Campbell, is there a measure in place or a process in place where we can measure how effective restorative practices are for our students?
Yeah, and one of the things, sometimes it's easy to pull data on numbers when we look at referrals, but what we're not just looking at quantitative data, we're trying to look at qualitative data. And so one of the things our campuses are doing are surveying students, community members, and staff in regards to positive changes on their campus and improved behavior on their campuses. So we're looking at both of those pieces.
Any other questions?
Just to add, and I want the board to be clear, restorative practices does not mean there's an absence of consequences.
Absolutely.
It's just, along with consequences, you're trying to change behavior, or as someone said a while ago, if you're suspending students from school 3 days at a pop and they're 5 different times, it's not changing behavior. So we're trying to find something to actually change behavior and lessen the aggravation maybe that teachers have in their classroom. So there are consequences, but we're trying to change behavior is the bottom line.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you, Dr. Stewart, as well. Mm-hmm. Would we like to keep that as a separate item, everyone? All right. All right, we're down to F. The board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, CJ Local, contracted services, and that is an addition. Any questions on that item? Mr. Ryan?
Is this new, Marnie? The
Yes, that's it.
CJ Local? Is that a new addition?
This is the one that we added, correct? Yeah. This is the one that we added because it's the companion to Senate Bill 7. Yes. So it's really just the belts and suspenders approach. As you may recall, I think it was on even TV a good bit about. I hate to use the phrase passing the trash, but it was that concept that the legislature kept saying that they wanted to address, that individuals were going from district to district. This is that version, but in contracted services. And so basically it means that you can't actively assist someone that you know has engaged in an inappropriate relationship in getting contracted services for a district. So it could be everything from the type of services we contract for now, architects, engineers, or it could be some districts actually hires independent contractors, instructional folks, instructional coaches, speech pathologists, etc. So while it's worded kind of odd in contractual services and under the business series policies, it's really kind of that holistic approach to the concept of not helping someone move along to a new district if there is a substantiated concern or allegation regarding inappropriate relationship with the student.
Okay, and I applaud you guys because I think this is another step in keeping our campuses safe, obviously. So I just wanted a little clarification on that, and so the public knows that we are taking precautions in that area.
Yeah, it's really like I said, it's the belts and suspenders approach. It's coming at it from every angle that can be thought of.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions on that item? Can that be on consensus?
Yes.
All right. That brings us to G. The board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, BDAA, local officers, that's local officers and officials, duties and requirements of board officers, that's a revision. And 2, EF, local instructional resources, that's also an addition. EFA, local instructional resources, instructional materials, that's a deletion. 4, EFAA, local instructional resources, selection and adoption, that's a deletion. 5, EHDB, local alternative methods for earning credit by examination with prior instruction, a revision. C, EIF local academic achievement graduation, that's a revision. And 7 EL local campus charters, that's a revision. Any questions on any of those items? Any questions? I know that we had some discussion on item number 1 last time, but as I reread that, that was the way that the board wanted to see it. Everyone comfortable with that?
Yes, I was actually going to point that out, that if you'll note that between readings 1 and 2, we made the change that the board as a consensus wanted to see.
Right. I think it was accomplished. All right, can that go in consensus, everyone? Great. The next item on the agenda was a board training, and we were scheduled to have a board team of 8 training on Monday night, but we will reschedule that. We just didn't feel comfortable having that long training on the first day of school with the revised calendar. Dr. Ogletree?
On this last one that we just moved to consensus, EL local campus charters. Do we have campus charters? What is this?
We do not.
Why did we change the policy, or what we don't have?
That's a TASB recommended policy to better align with the language in the statute should we ever in the future decide to do a district charter.
Okay. All right.
Are you okay with that then, Dr. Ogletree?
Because the language has always been, we've always had the EL local. It was just, this was the revision to, according to TASB, they felt it better aligned our policy with the actual statutory law. Should we ever decide to do it, which I would doubt in this district we would, but it's
I was
there.
just wondering if Linda had come up with something new.
You never can count this one out. She's always innovating.
Linda's always capable of coming up with something new, but the partnership or addition of charters is not in our plan, I hope. We do a lot better job than they do.
All right, so as I was saying, we were going to have a Monday training, but we're not going to do that just because it's our first day of school. And we're looking at doing that on October 9th, and all the board members are checking their calendar. And we will be back to you, Marnie, on that. Superintendent's briefing will be presented Monday night. We do have 2 additional items, and I did change that order because I asked for B to be first so we can talk about this item briefly, because I think our report on how we're recovering from Hurricane Harvey is something that might take a little longer. So I wanted to go ahead and get B done first. The board will discuss the opportunity for Bob Covey to attend the TASB Lobbying Day in Washington, D.C. And I just want to point out that Bob did attend last year, and I feel like we received a benefit from him meeting with our elected officials in Washington. And TASB covers the cost of some of that, but airfare and hotel is not covered. And I would like for the board to be aware that that will be something that the district will pay, and see how the board feels about that. And I'm recommending that we do this. Do you want to do some further explanation? Yeah. Any comments on that? Is everyone comfortable?
Will you be staying in that same suite that you were in last year, Bob?
I think he's going to a new Trump hotel.
Oh, good. We got that cleared up.
All right. The budget for that is approximately $1,400 to $1,500. That will leave us with one final item, because we do not have a closed session tonight, do we? That's always music to our ears if there's no closed session. The administration will provide a report on facilities, transportation, and school start date. And Dr. Henry, I believe you're going to start with that.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. We just, since our special meeting last week, we wanted to give not only the board but the community a little follow-up on where we are and some of the issues that we had occur after we had our special meeting, and kind of let Roy bring you up to date on that. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to let Roy talk about facilities, and then he'll get some assistance from Matt, maybe Dylan, on that issue along with transportation. And then when he's through, if that's all right, Roy Garcia stepped out, but Roy's going to talk to us a little bit about some campus issues. And then Teresa's going to bring us up to date along with Linda about the calendar going forward, along with the days that have been waived and the process for that. So Roy, Teresa, Linda, if y'all are okay with that.
Already? Well, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an update on where we stand with all our facilities that were impacted with Hurricane Harvey. Our team's been working ever since the first day of the storm hitting, and it's been 13 days plus, I believe, the last time I counted, that we've been trying to work 24/7 to make sure all our buildings are safe and secure for the staff when they return today, as well as the students returning on Monday. I'm not going to repeat everything I mentioned last update. I'm going to just give you all some additional information. And as I mentioned, this has been a very dynamic and ever-changing situation we've been dealing with. And I previously reported to you we had 81 facilities. We were still getting information on an hourly basis. We actually had a total of 87 buildings that actually had water infiltration in the building. All of that was rainwater with the exception of Moore Elementary, which, as I mentioned before, we had over 2 feet of water in the entire building and pretty much lost all the contents in the building. We were able to salvage some of the things I'll talk about more in a minute. I do want to report that all the buildings are ready. Our team's been working night and day and trying to clean up the grounds, making sure all the water's been cleaned up, and making sure that it's safe, that we have no mold growth or anything else in our buildings to make sure it's safe for everybody. And I'm happy to report, as of this report tonight, we're in great shape to be ready to start school for Monday on everything. One of the things I was asked to look at, and we've been trying to look at that this whole week, is what was the potential cost that we think it's impacted Cyfair. And right now, just putting some rough numbers together, looking at all our labor costs with all the cleanup activities that were done. And I need to mention that all the cleanup activities were done by our in-house personnel. We did not have to bring an outside contractor in except for the Moore Elementary School project. Everything was done between our maintenance and operations departments, as well as our facilities group, food service, and other departments to assist us. And that certainly saved the district a lot of money as a result of that. And then the other thing I do want to point out is the fact that we did a lot of preparation prior to the storm. Our team started meeting early that week before the storm hit and putting all the preparation things that we normally do to get the facilities ready for any type of storm like this. And that certainly helped mitigate some of the damages that we could have incurred as a result of this type of storm and the flooding conditions that we saw from that. So I wanted to point that out. But based on my team's estimate today, and including the Moore Elementary School renovations and work that we'll have to do there, we believe right now it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 to $14 million is the total impact. And again, this is a very rough number. It's just throwing some numbers together, looking at our payroll and our personnel and the number of people we had working in the school district, and just a rough idea of what we think the impact is going to be at the Moore Elementary School campus that we're dealing with. I want to talk to you a little bit about Old Matsky. Old Matsky is now called Moore Elementary on Jones Road. We've actually added some new signage up there on the front of the building and on the marquee to give it its own identification to help the morale out of the campus and the community there. The building is ready. Our teams have worked night and day to get furniture moved in there, set up. Technology has been great to work with in getting all the computers and Promethean boards set up. Building is completely cleaned. We did a lot of PM work on the HVAC, electrical systems to make sure everything was up and running and make it a very smooth return for the staff today officially, as well as the students returning on Monday. So we're really excited about we had the opportunity to convert that facility as quickly as we were able to do, and that we had that option available considering the damage we sustained at Moore Elementary School. Now at Moore Elementary School, a lot of progress has been done since I last reported to you. We have removed all the carpet, all the casework. We've removed all the demountable partitions. We have a general contractor under contract doing the work for us, Satterfield and Ponticus. They were the general contractor that constructed Cypress Park High School. They swarmed that building probably with 200 plus people the first day to start doing all the cleanup operations. If you walk in that building now, you really don't see any walls other than some brick walls that are still standing in the building right now. That was part of the original construction. We're removing all the ceiling tiles and ceiling grid this evening and through the weekend and getting that cleaned up. The other thing we've done is we've added a bunch of dehumidifiers into the building because we now have to start the drying out process of the building, and that's going to take probably about 3 weeks to go through. We completed boxing up all the paper goods and teacher materials and so forth and boxed them up. We actually used a professional mover that came in and worked for us to do that work, and they did a fantastic job in getting everything organized by room number. And then we worked with the campus to allow the teachers to go into the cafeteria. We cleaned up the cafeteria before we allowed them to get in there, and then they could go search through their belongings and take whatever they wanted to. And Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong, we started moving those boxes out this afternoon, I believe. We're starting to move the rest of those goods out of the building so we have a complete empty building and do the dry out process and start the restoration process that we're doing. One of the things we are looking at it more right now is what can we do to help provide some mitigation for any future rain events or hopefully, not hopefully, but if we ever incurred a flood situation. And we've been meeting last couple of days, I'm sorry, I said weeks, it feels like that. It's been a long time, but we met with our civil engineers, we have an architect on board, our mechanical, electrical consultants, and we brainstormed quite a bit the other day and what options we have. And we're going to pursue several opportunities. One of the things, if you look at the building, the windows go all the way down to the floor. A real simple solution is we cut some of the window out, fill it in with brick, solid wall to help reduce some of the water coming in. That building has an atrium. That atrium, we're going to go ahead and look at just enclosing that atrium and eliminate that being a problem. When you looked at the volume of water that came in for the rain, there's no way that drain system could keep up, and we know we had water coming into the building from that atrium as well. And we've had previous rain events where we've had water come in through the atrium around the perimeter there, so that's one of the things we'll look at. We're also going to look at on-site detention and seeing what we can do to help mitigate that and try to work with our engineers. It is a fairly tight site to work with some things that we're dealing with, but one option, like we did at Holbrook Elementary, we actually did the detention underneath the parking lot, and that's certainly a potential option that we're going to look at as well. So these are just a few examples of some of the things we're looking at with my team as to how we can help mitigate some future risks for us as part of the restoration process for the elementary school. We're still going to shoot for trying to get the building ready for January, but depending on some of this restoration and some of the mitigation issues we're going to be looking at, I don't feel comfortable saying I will definitely have it ready for you in January. That's certainly our team's goal, to have the building ready. Fortunately, we have the Maskey facility to utilize. That gives us a little bit of breathing room, but ultimately our goal is to do everything we possibly can to make sure we can get that building done by the end of this calendar year and be able to have the campus transfer back to their original campus to do that. But as we continue our investigation and looking at things we have to do, working with the county, getting plan approvals, permits, and things like that, these are all factors that we're a little unsure about today that we're going to continue to research and pursue so that I can feel comfortable to give Dr. Henry and the board an update at a later date as to when we really think we could get the building ready for the first day of school or return them back for their campus. We ran from our meeting last Friday. As we were bringing systems online, we found some HVAC issues. We had some plant problems where we had some motors that went out on us. So we've been working around the clock getting those things done, and we got quite a bit done up to today. We'll have the rest of the work done either tomorrow or Saturday, and all our HVAC systems will be back up and running for the first day of school Monday. We're very confident that won't be an issue for us in terms of the HVAC stuff that we're dealing with. Mud districts. I want to talk about the mud districts as that was an ever-changing environment we were dealing with. When I reported to you last Friday, at the time we had known of three campuses that were impacted by two mud districts. Yeager Elementary School, and it turned out we actually cleared Yeager late that afternoon on Friday. It turned out to be a power issue, and they were able to get the power restored to get their plant back up and running. So that problem went away pretty quickly. As we further researched the issue at Horn and Truett, which was MUD 102, we found out later that they actually did you cannot use the sewer system whatsoever. And one of the things we had been working on as a backup plan is to go secure either porta potties or some portable restroom facilities. And we were successful Friday night to be able to get those secured, and we had those delivered over to the campuses, both Truett and Horn, over the weekend, and worked to get all the connections ready so that our staff had usable restrooms when they returned officially today. The good news that we're hearing, I would like to report to you, in conversations our engineers had with the MUD engineers, the Horn and Truett issue is getting better. They've actually got one of their lift stations up and running, some of their pumps up and running. So they are going to allow us to operate the facility with our full services, so we can use all our restrooms and we can provide full food service capabilities there. We were looking as a backup option to go ahead and bring box lunches in if we needed to and serve bottled water. Right now it does not appear that we will have to do that based on the last report that we got before this board meeting. So we're really excited about to be able to report that it should not impact our operations. The one thing the MUD has asked us to do is just to reduce the amount of water consumption at the campus over there, and just try to reduce that as much so we don't impact the wastewater treatment plant for MUD 102. Friday night, September 1st, Saturday morning, September 2nd, we received additional notifications about the Jackrabbit Regional Water Treatment Plant had similar issues to like MUD 102. Their plant was submerged in water, their pumps were working, and we received notification. So we began immediately trying to figure out what can we do and how do we deal with that issue. The good news again today is that that plant is slowly coming back online, and they will allow us to run our full services, food service, as well as utilize all the restrooms. So right now we do not see that being any impact whatsoever for us for Monday. So we're happy to report that. That Jackrabbit plant affected 5 MUD districts, which affected 5 of our facilities. It was Metcalf, Tips, Wilson, Leader, and Watkins. And so we're happy to report that right now we have permission from the MUD engineer that we can do our normal full services over there. So that takes a lot of pressure off of us to make sure that the campus can function normally at this time with the MUDs. We had another incident today, which kind of scares us a little bit, related to Kirk Elementary School, but it turned out that they were repairing a water break somewhere, and they turned the water off to the campus. We got word that we had a mud problem, so we were worried about that, but I got a text message a little while ago, and that water has been restored, and we have services over there at Kirk Elementary School. So that covers the mud issues. The other thing I wanted to bring up is just, I know there's a lot of reports in the news about mold and mildew, and I can assure you we've been working with our environmental consultant, EFI Global. They've actually helped us develop our current mold remediation and water damage remediation procedures we currently have in place that our maintenance and operation departments do. We not only contacted him prior to the storm, we've been in contact with him throughout the event, and we just had another meeting with him, and he's assured us that all the methods that we implemented by our teams with maintenance and operation was right on track, industry standard, and he sees no area of concern. What we will do is we will continue to monitor our buildings, and if there is any sign of any potential mold growing, our remediation team in-house will immediately take care of the issue, so we don't have an environmental or health issue to be concerned with in our buildings with that. Transportation, we reported last go round that we were going to have about 80 to 85% of our drivers. Last report a little while ago is we will probably have about 90% drivers that will be able to report to work, which is about normal for us in terms of our personnel on the first day of school. So we do not see any impact whatsoever to our transportation services over there. We have double checked on the fuel. We still very, very comfortable. We have plenty of fuel to last us for a couple of weeks. The one impact that we will have, as we reported previously, we will probably see, and we've all seen it, a jump at the gas pump in terms of the pricing over there. And it's just something we're going to have to deal with and work through as time goes on. Hopefully the situation will get better, and we'll see a drop in pricing. But of course, with Hurricane Irma out there potentially hitting Florida, we still anticipate it's going to affect us negatively from a price standpoint. If you've been driving around the school district, you've been seeing some signal lights that are malfunctioning. functioning, they're blinking. We're certainly, anytime we see one of those, we're trying to report it to the county to see if they can get those operational before the first day of school. Not sure they'll be able to get to all of them, so there's going to be probably some slowdown in traffic in some places. I think we're planning on sending out a school messenger tomorrow to let parents know, just be patient. We're going to have potentially some delays out there, and as you know, the city is severely impacted with the Beltway 8, Clay Road, Eldridge Road, as well as Highway 6 being closed down, and people are trying to find alternative ways to get to the west side of the district and west side of Houston. So we're certainly working with our drivers. In fact, I think we had buses running today and running tomorrow just to check routes, so we can make sure we've got routes covered based on the road closures, so we can minimize any delays in transportation come Monday morning. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Roy. Any questions? Mr. Jackson?
That was a good, thorough update, Roy. I am going to ask you to repeat some of what you said, because I think it's important for our listening audience to hear it once again. So we met in an emergency session. We got an update, and based on the information that we had available that was presented to us, we felt that we could, in fact, open campuses. So go through what changed from the time we had the meeting until Saturday, when an announcement was released saying the start date for both teachers as well as students would be pushed back.
Prior to the board meeting that we had on Friday, we had been contacting all the MUD districts, and one thing I think I failed to mention is our water quality at all of our campus has not been contaminated, so all the domestic water systems have remained intact, and there's no issue with the quality of water. So none of the MUD districts that serve our district have any issue. We don't have any or boil water notices to deal with. And as I mentioned, this situation was dynamic. It was ever changing. So based on the information we had available, we felt very comfortable with the information and the plans we had in place that we could, in fact, open school, like Dr. Henry had indicated, on that Wednesday, and have staff return on Tuesday. Unfortunately, that evening, early next morning, we got notification of the Jackrabbit water plant issue, and then we immediately contacted Dr. Henry to make him aware of the situation. We actually had an emergency conference call with our cabinet and other support personnel to discuss the issues and the risk associated with that. And we were scrambling around trying to get more and more updates. The problem was we couldn't talk to a live person with the MUDs. We were getting their answer machines, trying to check their websites if they had a website. And so some of the information was very scarce at best, and we really wanted to talk with live people and talk with the engineers and find out truly what the issue is and whether or not we would be able to do the full services at our campuses. And so we passed that information on to Dr. Henry and the cabinet.
You know, you made a very good point. And I served for 22 years as a director, and 16 of those as a director of a joint operations board for a sewage treatment plant. With the difficulty that this hurricane posed for us and the communication, do we have any thought in the future, after we get all the work done, of trying to go back and contact these 80 some odd MUDs that we deal with, and probably 40 different engineers and probably 10 to 15 different operators, to try and enhance the communication, because it's very critical to us, but it's also critical to hospitals as well.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we'll do once the dust settles and we can get back to some normalcy of schedule. My team will meet, and we are going to evaluate how we responded, what issues came up. Because one thing I've learned over the years is every one of these events is unique, and something different is thrown at you that may not have occurred at a previous event. And we certainly have all the contact information with the MUDs, the MUD engineers, our civil engineer, Brooks and Sparks, who does a lot of work for us. They're instrumental in helping us with this. So we talk with their engineers, who in turn could call the MUD engineers, because they already have established relationships. And that's how I've been able to get the information I presented to you this evening, in the fact that we did get clearance from these mud engineers to allow us to use our facilities as we normally would. But yes, we definitely want to continue and enhance those relationships and try to figure out a different way or a better way to try to enhance that communication so we can get information quicker to help us give all the information we need to get to Dr. Henry and the cabinet so we can make a good decision.
And that communication is difficult. I know that I was on a board when one of the hurricanes struck, and there was literally no way that we could be in touch with the operator because cell phone towers had been compromised and not everybody has a landline anymore. But I do appreciate your being aware that we can enhance that communication because it is critical, not only just for us, but also for others. The church I attend was impacted by one of the boiled water notices, and as a result could not serve food to evacuees or even to pod visitors, as it were. You raised a very excellent point, but I'm going to ask the question again. Even though there are boiled water notices in our service area, it does not impact the ability of our schools to supply good potable water. Is that correct?
That is correct. And just to add to that, Mr. Jackson, we are still on a daily basis monitoring the websites and talking to the mud operators to make sure everything is still on go, because again, being a dynamic situation, something could actually happen at one of the plants that may be perfectly working today, but tomorrow could malfunction, which could impact. So we are staying in constant contact with each of those mud operators to get updates to make sure we're still ready for the first day of school. And right now, based on the information we have as of now, we feel very confident that we'll be in great shape on Monday.
I received an email from my church encouraging all of the people who belong to the church to make certain that any comments made on social media happen to be accurate. But of course, we have all types of social media. I'm going to read you a little information out of the September 7th Chronicle, page A10. Houston officials Wednesday pleaded with residents on the city's west side to limit their water use until 2 flooded sewage treatment plants can be repaired. The city's West District and Turkey Creek wastewater treatment plants still were under 8 feet of water Monday night and remained shut down Wednesday morning. This means residents in and they listed 8 different zip codes, one of which is 77041, are being asked to limit water use, meaning fewer flushes. They concluded with the Senate's failing to limit wastewater use, officials said, could lead to sewage to back up into the homes of people served by those 2 plants. That would also mean that the backup could happen to anybody who happens to access not just homes. Now, if we take a look at the 77041 zip codes, and they serve the following schools: Cy Ridge High School, Hare Grove Elementary, Kirk Elementary, and Lee Elementary. I know the information is already on the form in front of us. They have been addressed, but if you would, for our viewing audience, but also for the press, would you address whether or not the concern espoused by the City of Houston for those 2 wastewater treatment plants impacts, first, for those schools that were identified as being in that service area?
To the best of our knowledge, they do not impact our schools. And again, as I mentioned, we're continually monitoring the website. I think it's Harris County Mud 130, I believe, is the one that serves Cy Ridge in that area. And certainly with the information you just provided, we will actually follow up again to make sure there's no impact. But as of today, with all the contacts we've made with all the mud districts, they're indicating we're good to go.
Excellent. With respect to air quality, as well as building quality, the newspapers have been rife with reminding everybody that this water that is flowing everywhere is toxic. And certainly when I stepped into it to help with an evac, I was reminded of the fact is, I mean, this stuff really looks like sewer. water when it swirls around your legs. Briefly describe what procedures you've taken to ensure that any of that infiltration to our schools has been addressed from a sanitary perspective.
Typically, we'll go in and try to determine, is it clean water or is it gray water? In all cases, it was clean water with the exception of Moore Elementary School. And in fact, at Moore Elementary School, we actually had to bring a hazmat team in part of the building because we had some sewage backup once the water receded, and we had to have that crew come in and do the cleanup in Moore before we could have any contractor personnel work within that section of the building to do that. Our teams mobilized as quickly as we could based on the information that was provided not only by the police department, but we also had teams monitoring our security cameras through the entire event. Even though we could not get out to the buildings, we were able to pull up on the cameras and look at whether we had any substantial water damage in any of our buildings. Most of the water was strictly at doorways and around some of the windows. It was clean water that came into the building. A lot of it was actually on tile floor, which is very little impact whatsoever. We did have some on carpet, and when we do have carpet, we extract the water, we clean it, we biocide it, and run the air conditioning as well, so we make sure we dry that carpet out. And the one thing about our carpet that we utilize, and I need to go ahead and mention this, it's a rubber backing, it's a waterproof backing, so the water typically stays in the nylon. So when we extract it, we're extracting everything out. No water is seeping between the joints because they're actually chemically sealed. And as a result of that, water doesn't get underneath the padding or anything like you typically will see in a residential. When you pull the carpet up, and if it's been sitting there for a while, it's not going to look good underneath that slab. Because of the type of products we specify, the way we build our buildings, we also think has helped quite a bit in the mitigation and having very little damage. But that is our typical protocol. If we see any signs of mold and mildew, our mold remediation team within our operations department gets mobilized and goes ahead and cleans it and follows the protocol that was established working with our environmental consultant, and we make sure those steps are followed to the T, and we've been good. Everything's been great with it.
So we believe that we have a good, safe operating environment not only for our students, but also our staff.
Absolutely.
With respect to the water quality, right now we're relying upon the mud districts delivering us good water. Many of our muds in this area are covered by either the west or by the north. And those agreements provide that surface water, i.e. lake water, comes through those plants and is in fact distributed. And that is done to mitigate subsidence. Clearly the lake water, at least in the short term, has been compromised. To the best of our knowledge, do we believe that our muds are in fact up to the task of any additional chlorination or cleaning of surface water that may be directed to them?
Our understanding in our conversations with the mud district, yes, they have everything in place and they are assuring us that the water quality they're serving to our buildings is safe.
I would suggest, and this is less than a recommendation, I certainly would not oppose if we wanted to take water samples independently to have them tested just on a spot basis. Clearly, we rely upon the muds to ensure our water quality. Having served, I know that our muds do in fact take water quality samples which are sent to an independent lab for testing, and you watch those very carefully. You want to make certain that all your water fleas can live and procreate. But I would definitely support if y'all wanted to do any spot testing simply for reassurance of our shareholders. But I'm stopping short of saying that I think it needs to be done because I think we can rely upon our muds. But if y'all wanted to add belt and suspenders, I certainly would not oppose it.
Mr.
thank
Jackson,
you.
we've already have had some conversations about considering doing some water testing, and we're going to evaluate that as we continue forward. But we do have our consultant lined up right now. Based on our conversation with him, he does not feel it's necessary at this point in time. But as again, this is a very dynamic and ever-changing situation. So if we get any wind of any concerns, then certainly we can implement doing some water testing. And I've already talked to Dr. Henry about it, and he supports that as well.
And thank you for a very thorough report. This is a very sensitive issue. We do, in fact, want to do our utmost to provide a safe facility for all of our students. And I have to applaud the work that you have done. You and your department have undoubtedly saved this district and also our taxpayers millions of dollars with preventative steps. 51 inches of water over a span of 5 days is not necessarily something that you can always plan for, but this could have been so much worse, and it was not, and that didn't happen by serendipity. It happened because y'all took preventative steps to address matters that could be addressed, and I want to say thank you and also applaud the work of you and your team.
Thank you.
Just to add to that also, I think it goes back even further, Mr. Jackson, and you may have been referring to that. I think it's just the quality of the buildings we build in the first place and how well they're engineered. You can see how little damage we had when there was over 50 inches of rain, and I can't imagine in my lifetime that there'll be a greater rain event than this, and short of an ark and 2 of each kind of animal. So it's a great job from the very beginning, Roy.
Thank you. And we've asked Mr. Snow to provide some dollars for us to buy a boat in case we needed to go check facilities out in the future if we ever have another event.
Any other questions? Dr. Ogletree?
I was going to ask that. Have we considered buying a vehicle?
We've been seriously talking about it. It would certainly help us to get to the buildings a lot quicker than we were able to.
Yeah. Now, going back to Moore, the projected time for the students and staff to move from the old Maskey back into Moore is January. Is that right?
That's correct. That's our goal.
If that doesn't happen, if all the remediation, all that takes you into, let's say, mid-February, is the goal still before the end of the school year to move those students and staff back to their campus?
I think there's a point of no return where you say it's not worth moving for a couple of 3 more months of school. So I would say if we're talking getting into February and March, we would probably just finish the school year there, and then that would give us some type of orderly move back to more elementary. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I mean, and like what I've learned a lot from Roy is it's not the construction time that you have to worry about, it's the permit time and getting permission to start. So that sometimes puts projects behind. So
well, and the other issue we're going to be facing is delivery of materials and the scarcity of materials and labor. You know, with you look at all the devastation that's going across the Houston area and what's happening in Corpus and Beaumont and Port Arthur, and now potentially what's going to happen in Florida, I assure you we're going to have difficulty in getting the labor force to be able to focus in on this. We're going to do everything we can with the relationships we've established. We've got good rapport with all the subcontractors out there, so they consider us one of their primary clients, so we know we'll get their attention, and I think we'll have a better chance than any other school district to be able to try to make that happen so we can get the more students back to their original home campus in January.
But one thing on that too, and I'm putting a caveat in what Roy just said, is we're going to talk to the staff over there too, the staff and the parents, and get their input and see how they feel, because we certainly don't want to disrupt our teachers over there or our students any more than we have to. So that'll be something we'll see as this project moves forward.
And I think you said this too, and I'm sure if there was any question on our water, and we would quickly go to bottled water for
Absolutely.
our staff and students.
Absolutely.
Well,
Matt's got plenty of bottled water in distribution, and we have access to it very quickly if we need it.
okay.
Good. Any questions on this side? Mr. Ryan?
First, I'm really amazed at the job y'all have done. And I mean, 87 buildings with water infiltration, 13 days ago? And then we're talking about starting school Monday. Is just kind of blows me away. And Tom asked some great questions as far as safety and everything. And then you mentioned on more kind of the additional detention. When you look across the district, especially with some of the renovations we've had, and we've added detention at various sites, are there any other sites that, in seeing this huge amount of rainfall that we had, where we need to go back, where we would have to go back and say, hey, we need to increase detention in these areas?
I think that's something our team is going to evaluate as we move forward and look at not only the cameras and seeing how the water levels were around these buildings, and see as we go to those buildings to try to renovate and see if there's any other mitigation things that we could do, like we're talking about doing at Moore, and try to implement that at other campuses. You know, Adam, as you well know, that area floods quite a bit. We were actually surprised because we actually thought Adam was on our target list, that we're probably going to have another Moore on our hands. We had a little bit of water in the building. The building fared out very, very well. And in fact, that neighborhood actually did pretty well. I only saw one house that actually had carpet remnants on right there at the driveway to get picked up by trash. And I was surprised because I know in the tax day flood, that whole area was flooded, and all the houses had to remove carpet and sheetrock and everything else, like some of the other neighborhoods had experienced in Harvey. But right now, we're going to look at the performance of the buildings and evaluate with our engineers and our maintenance and operation teams. And if there is any other mitigation we can do as we're doing the bond renovations, we're certainly going to look at that and be proactive to try to address any issues that we see that we can try to mitigate now while we have the opportunity to do it.
Well, I agree with you on Adam. I was as shocked as you, but I do think that the detention that y'all added there,
it made a difference.
Made a
yes.
huge difference on that. So that
Absolutely.
was a great job by y'all. And then, what do we have campuses that you mentioned portable restrooms?
We have them at, we are renting, they're basically self-contained portable restroom buildings. We had to hook up power and water to them. Actually, the service includes the maintenance of it twice a day during the period of time for the rental period. But yes, we have 5 buildings over at Truett, and we were able to find 4 buildings for Horn.
Just so the parents know, in case they haven't seen these, because the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo uses them quite a bit. We're not throwing a bunch of porta cans in the parking lots.
No.
Okay, no, but that needs to be clarified,
Yeah.
because when you say portable restrooms, that's the first thing people think of, and these are very nice facilities, actually.
Well, we were using that as a second backup if we had to, but fortunately we did not have to implement that. When I talked to Dr. Henry about it, he and I both felt that's not what we want to do, but it certainly was another option we were considering. But I can tell you, we pulled our hair out trying to get the 9 buildings we have.
Obviously, look at Mark.
I'm starting to lose some too right now. But
it is easier to get a rental car in Houston right now than it is to get a porta potty. So
we
that
were
tells you
calling
something.
national companies, Mr. Ryan, and trying to track it down. And I got to give credit to Gilbane Building Company, because they're the ones that actually came through. They're a national general contractor, and I had multiple conversations with them Friday evening. Dylan was contacting all his contacts, and we just pulled our phone book out and started calling anybody and everybody that could help us. And Gilbane was the one that was able to come through for us. So we really appreciated what they were able to do to help us and pull us out of a potential jam there.
And also, I do want to commend our communications department, because if on social media, they're giving updates on these campuses throughout the day that's invaluable to our shareholders to see. I mean, there's been a ton of stuff going on social media with what's going on at Matsky, and where it's now becoming more. And Joel, you guys, and Nicole, everybody, y'all have done a great job on that. So thank you very much.
Ms. Blacksher?
I was just going to say, Roy, didn't we use portable bathroom facilities during the Watkins
Yes, we did.
renovation? Okay, and
Yeah, unfortunately, we had taken those off, and we were actually trying to get those back if we could, but we couldn't pull that one off, unfortunately.
That was the main reason that we had to move school back a little further, was the inability to find any type of nice portable facilities. And I actually received emails from I actually received some from some of the engineers at the MUDs, and they said, do you understand if you use the restrooms, the damage it might cause to homeowners? So that helped weigh in our decision also.
One thing I failed to mention in the presentation is we also had our plumbers going around the last several days checking all our domestic water systems and checking all our sewer systems to make sure there was no backups or anything and everything was operating properly. And we'll continue to have our plumbers monitor our systems over this next week or two. Hopefully the systems will get better and come back online quicker as the MUD districts start pulling their things together and the flooding recedes and they can get their plants fully operational. But that is a plan that we're looking at doing right now and making sure we have that implemented next week.
Very good. Mr. Covey?
Yeah, Roy, just to piggyback on everybody else, your team is just astonishing, and it's just amazing number one, to hear that you actually prepared for a storm before it happened, because I think a lot of people think we just react, but you prepared, and that was wonderful. But I did have a constituent call and ask a question, and I thought it was a pretty viable question to ask. And when you drive around through some of these subdivisions and you see all the inner parts of the houses out on the curbs and in the lawns, there's a concern about our buses being able to pick up our kids. And I was wondering if you had looked at that, if y'all had addressed that issue, and what are we going to do about some of these areas which it's hard to even get a car down?
Matt, did you want to come up? I know y'all were doing some bus routes and stuff today. Maybe you can better answer that for us.
Yeah, wake up back there. Come on up here.
I saw him sleeping back there, so.
I was awake, Roy.
Okay, good.
Just for the record. Actually, transportation has taken that very seriously. We're going to drive all the areas of the district. We started today, and we're doing it tomorrow. We're going to identify areas where we have issues. And we're working with our drivers, and we've told them, because we've seen the debris too, and I'm going to go ride with some of the drivers tomorrow, but we're giving them some flexibility. We're not going to change the bus stops officially online, but we're going to give our drivers flexibility of where they pick up close to the bus stop so that we are avoiding any debris. We do anticipate where we're going to run into some areas where we may not be able to navigate, and we're going to give the drivers the flexibility to avoid those areas and pick up at the closest stop. And we'll try to communicate that to parents as we drive today and tomorrow what these areas are. Yes, sir.
One other thing, Mr. Kelby, one of the things that we are seeing is that some of our trash dumpsters are getting overloaded by some of the patrons out there. We had a big pile of trash over at Side Creek that we had to get crews assembled over there to get cleaned up. That's another thing we'll be monitoring to try to make sure that we don't impact driveways and things like that as we get ready for Monday.
Ms. Blackshear?
I guess that was my next question, and Matt kind of answered it, but how do we plan to communicate with parents in those affected areas? Because I can see where we might go down a street that now we're going to have to pick up on the corner until all the trash is picked up. Are we going to communicate with these families individually by email, or what is the plan, Matt?
As we drive the areas and identify those areas, we'll work with Nicole and her staff to see if we can either do school messenger or work with the individual campuses that are zoned to those areas to communicate to the parents. Yes, ma'am.
And if I could just add one thing, I just want to give my team, as well as all the departments we work with, and as I mentioned last time, I know I'll leave some departments out, but communications, technology, business and finance, everybody's just worked together, a big team effort to make this happen. It's not just one department, and I certainly appreciate the comments, but Dylan and Matt and the rest of our teams and our directors have just done a yeoman's job in staying on top of the details and ever-changing things all day long, even in the middle of the night. We get reports of things to be able to jump on it right away to take care of things. So give credit to everybody involved.
Thank you very much, Roy. I just had one brief follow-up too. I heard you say that you estimate the repairs are 12 to 14 million. Does that include the more repairs or not?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It's included in that
I just wanted to
estimate.
make sure that I got that number right.
The more repairs are probably 90% of that
Yeah,
figure.
probably, right now, we're thinking this will be somewhere probably 10.5 to 12 million, and it may go higher depending on what additional mitigation work we might be able to do. And one of the things we're going to attempt to do is through the FEMA FEMA typically will help refund, I think it's up to 75% of any additional mitigation measures you're able to do to prevent a future event. So we're trying to evaluate that and work with our general contractor to get some budget numbers so we can start looking at how this is all going to come together and seeing which items we can move forward with.
Well, I think when you consider that many of our buildings had rainwater in them, and the fact that we can get up and running for 14 million or less, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I think that's very efficient use of taxpayer money.
Well, it shows the capabilities of the teams that we have in place and the procedures and the protocols we have to be able to respond and react very quickly to reduce any damages to the district and ultimately reduce the cost to the taxpayers.
Well, you and your team do a great job.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Garcia is next. Sorry about that.
That's okay. My report probably will not be as extensive nor as exciting as Brother Roy's, but last time we met, you received data and information about would staff be able to report to work. We shared some percentages with you and some numbers district-wide, and we decided that it was a good opportunity today that principals are back on campus with their staff to see what those numbers look like. And I'll just share a little information with you about that. Of our 91 principals, 67 reported that they did not anticipate any staff members who would not be able to report to work on Monday due to Hurricane Harvey. So big changes in what we shared with you on last Friday. Also, if you look at the individual campuses, the highest number of staff members who can't report to work on Monday due to Hurricane Harvey was 6 at the elementary level and 8 at the secondary level. So it is safe to say that we feel very confident that we'll be able to have staff on Monday, the 11th of September. There are some other absences, of course, if you look at just personal leave, things of that nature, but even looking at that, the numbers that we receive from the principals today is not uncommon to what we experience on any other giving day. Matter of fact, I think it's lower than what we have. I think teachers are excited about the start as well, and they plan to be there. Perhaps some were like me, I had jury duty for Tuesday, but I don't have to go now. Well, I shouldn't say it like that. I don't have to go. I don't get to go. But I know that there are other staff members that may be in similar situations. So excited about the staff that report. They will be there and ready to be there.
That's great news. Ms. Blackshirt?
Do we have any idea how many of our staff were impacted by storm damage in their homes?
I don't know that we have the exact number, and we didn't share all of the survey results with you on Friday, but it had many questions. And one of the questions was, yes, would you be able to report to work? But even before that, are you safe? And all of those responses that were no or they needed assistance, we worked with our campus principals, and they individually contacted those staff members to determine what was it that you needed, give us more information. And we were getting constant email communication back from principals on what those scenarios were and what we could do to help out. And I think it's safe to say that time has definitely benefited everyone.
Sure. Okay.
Ms. Hartling?
Hey, you're right, Roy. I was just going to say that all that information is so great to hear. I couldn't attend the meeting last Friday, but I definitely got texts and messages from people with their opinions and questions and things like that. So this is great to hear. I agree with you. I think the teachers are ready to get back and hug the children and help the children get back to normalcy and make them feel safe. So thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Garcia, thank you very much. That does seem great, and we're just so happy that and I'm really glad we got some staff in today, and we're able to work with a lot of the staff.
Definitely.
I bet they felt great to get into their buildings too. Ms. Hall, I think that you're next.
Just wanted to give you a quick update on the status with the instructional days that were missed due to the cancellation of school. We're fortunate that TEA responded very quickly to school districts and put out correspondence regarding that. The first correspondence came out on August 29th, and Commissioner Morath indicated that districts would be eligible to apply for a waiver for missed instructional days from in that first waiver, it was from August 28th through September 1st. Then he, 3 days later, came back and submitted an additional correspondence to districts that extended that waiver eligibility for the week of 9/5 through 9/8. So that was a total of 9 days that districts were eligible to apply for a waiver for the missed instructional time. Just to kind of give you the status for the district and the impact, currently there are no plans to modify our calendar as a result of the missed days. We will apply for the waiver for the missed instructional time. And just want to quickly remind you that during the 84th legislative session, there was a modification in how instructional time is calculated. We went from a calculation of a number of required days to instructional minutes. The minimum instructional minutes in law is 75,600 minutes. And I'm pleased to share that our calendar for the 2017-18 calendar exceeded that minimum requirement. The calendar, as it was built by the calendar committee, included 76,515 minutes, an additional 915 minutes. So even though we're not going to be making up that time, we're still going to exceed the minimum for the state since there is a reduction in the number of instructional minutes that are required. Dr. Macias can definitely provide you more details about that as far as the work with our curriculum staff to make some adjustments there in the scope and sequence and working with our teachers on the campus. But we feel that we can make those modifications and still provide enough instructional time for our students to be successful. I know there's a lot of questions about graduation schedules. Based on the fact that we're not having to modify our instructional calendar, we will continue with the graduation schedule that has been posted and shared. So minimal changes in that regard. So we'll definitely be bringing that waiver for your approval at the October board meeting.
Thank you. Now, is Dr. Macias also going to say some?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just touch base on the instructional time lost. And I will share with you that my curriculum team, Mary, Dan, and Ashley, and the coordinators, directors, immediately began looking at the scope and sequence and making adjustments to condense that those standards to make sure that we're covering everything that is needed. And this isn't foreign to us. You all might recall when Ike visited us that we also lost time and we had to do the same thing. And so we feel very confident that we are able to adjust and modify the scope and sequence and still make sure that our kids are getting or taught the standards that are required.
That's excellent. Mr. Ryan?
Linda, thank you for that. Will this have any effect on the College Academy at all?
No, we do not expect that it'll have any impact at all, other than probably moving the kickoff for it. But other than that, it should not impact our College Academy.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ms. Hartley?
I was just thinking about, I appreciate you saying that, that y'all have already been looking into the curriculum and what do we need to do. I was contacted by somebody who has 2 children that have dyslexia and other learning disabilities, and you know, her concern is just if it's going to move at a more rigorous pace, or how are her children going to fare in this. And I know we have a lot of students who fall under the 504 umbrella, and so I just kind of wanted to touch on that and just kind of ask, and I know you guys have already thought about that, but I think it's probably a question that a lot of parents are wondering about.
Well, when we're modifying and adjusting the scope and sequence, we're obviously having to look at what are the most important things that we need to make sure that we are covering, and then we spiral a lot of that content back in throughout the year for support and just revisiting all that different content. So they don't need to worry about that. We are going to make sure that we take care of all of our students.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
Linda, I guess this question is really for you. Children at Risk reported this week that 1.4 million public school students were impacted by Harvey, of which 60% are economically disadvantaged. The Austin American-Statesman this week also noted that academic studies show that economically disadvantaged victims can take up to 4 times longer to recover from disasters than those with money. I know when our principals welcomed our students from Louisiana, that they noted that those students, even a year after being here in a safe environment, had not fully recovered a sense of well-being. We're all taught and we understand that if a student doesn't have that sense of well-being, it's very difficult for them to progress as we might like from an academic attainment standpoint. So the first question, and maybe this is for Dr. Henry, since you're going to see the commissioner for breakfast tomorrow morning, will the commissioner reduce the number of test questions our children have to get right? Like, Harvey cost us 9 days, so will there be 9 fewer questions we have to get right? Or will we be held to the same degree of accountability as, say, the students in Amarillo or Lubbock?
That is already a question that I'm sure he's fielded, but we'll look forward to hearing what he has to say tomorrow. But yes, that is on our list of questions to ask. But as astute as he is, I'm sure he's already working on that. But that is a great question, and one that we will hammer home, I guess is the right word.
Well, and I appreciate it. I did that a little tongue in cheek, meaning no disrespect to anybody from a trauma standpoint. But our children are impacted, and although our children are wonderfully resilient, this impact can be very significant. Is there, this district has gone through hurricanes before, and certainly we gained tremendous knowledge when we welcomed the children from Louisiana. Does our staff need any additional training? Or the better question is, do you need any additional resources, either from a counseling perspective or from a student support perspective, to try and assist our children who were impacted by Harvey? And the studies show your home didn't have to be damaged to be impacted, right? Out in our area, probably 80% of the homes were not directly impacted, but it is difficult to keep those empathetic feelings from flooding over, and certainly our children do not have the same filters. So one, do you believe your staff is where it needs to be? And two, do you need additional resources that are currently not available?
Before Linda responds, we've already started thinking about extra tutorials, especially once we get into the spring semester, and we approach that time of year where testing does occur. But it'll be a year-round event. But Roy and I have already talked about also the additional counseling after such a traumatic event that might need to be available. Now, certainly the details of all of the academic part, Dr. Macias will figure that out, but she never minds having her hand out around Stewart. I just will say that.
I always cringe when someone asks Linda if she needs additional resources.
That's why I jumped in there, Stewart.
and Mark,
looking out for the kids.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. I would add that it is not, talking to our principals who are here, who welcomed our Louisiana students, Another side effect, unintended, is it's entirely possible for teachers to get overwhelmed as well. So it's not just our students who may need additional assistance.
And if I may, that's one area that Dr. Henry and I have talked about. You're right. It's not just providing the support for our students and parents, but also our staff. And our guidance and counseling team have been working with that. More and more resources are added to the website. I don't think anyone will mind me sharing that tomorrow the guidance and counseling team will be out at Moore to take care of the Moore staff and to let them continue that process that they've been going through. And then all of our counselors will be on guard, ready to go on Monday when the kids return. Our KAIS workers will be out in force as well to make sure we've got additional support, not just for the students, first and foremost, yes, the students, but also our staff so they can take care of the students.
Excellent, thank you.
Just one comment on Mr. Jackson's questions. Also, we've been stating this is not a 2-week event. This is a school year 2017-18 event, and it is going to be an unusual year because of this 2-week event. But we're going to be there all year for not only our staff and our students, but our parents also. These are traumatic times for many people. Excuse me.
I was going to say, Tom, that's excellent question, and that the effects of Harvey are just so far-reaching. My 2 grandchildren who go to Woodard had to be evacuated by boat, and they are still waking up with nightmares over that. So it's going to be a lot of challenges that we face, and so good to be on top of it. Good question.
Ms. Blackshear?
I just wanted to say, I can only imagine this year that every time it starts to rain, that we will have students and adults nervous. Back many years ago when my boys were in elementary school at Lambkin, they were on their way home on a bus that there was bad weather and a tornado was coming through, and their bus driver, bless her, was wise enough to have all the kids get under their seats, and all the windows were busted out on the bus. And I can recall that for several years after that, anytime the skies got dark and the weather turned bad, they were traumatized remembering that event. So it just as Dr. Henry said, it's not a short-term recovery. These experiences will last with our students for many years to come.
I think that's why it's important that these issues are all being looked at, and counselors are looking, and we're working as a team to make sure we provide those resources. Any other questions about this report? And I know Tom had mentioned earlier to me that he may have some additional questions on Monday, just if something over the weekend happens, or just a brief update for the first day of school. So I'm sure that you all will entertain any of those questions. Anything else? I think this finishes our Committee of the Whole meeting, and we will be back on Monday at 6 o'clock for our board meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.